All right, I think we're going to get started. Welcome, everybody. Good afternoon. Thank you so much. I love seeing this great turnout for this panel. My name is Liz Kreutz. I'm a correspondent at NBC News, reporting for the Today Show, Nightly News, MSNBC, and all of our streaming platforms. So excited to be here today. We are going to try and leave time for some questions at the end, so brainstorm those as we're talking, and we do prefer questions, not comments, if possible, so keep that in mind. Before I introduce our esteemed governors here, can I just see by show of hands, how many people here think that we are living in more divisive times than ever before? Oh, okay. So yes, I think we at least have consensus over that this is a very polarizing period for our country. And so that is why we're here today, to talk about how we can solve this, how we can get two sides to work together to make a more productive future and country for all of us. And so we've brought together two governors from two neighboring states, from two different parts of the political spectrum, to help us understand how we can do this. I'm first going to introduce, oh, I love that it's raining. Governor Spencer Cox, the governor of Utah, chair of the National Governor Association, where you launched this Disagree Better initiative, and you are a Republican. And then here we have Governor Jared Polis, who is the governor of this great state we're all in, Colorado, vice chair of the National Governors Association, and a Democrat. You two have made it your mission to show that we can get along. Before we jump into the Disagree Better initiative, though, governors, I do want to talk about the debate, which I'm sure many of us watched, or at least watched clips of last night. Governor Polis, I want to start with you. I'm sure you've seen some of the criticism against President Biden for his performance last night, and questions now about whether he should step aside, whether he's fit to run for office right now and serve another term. What did you make of his performance, and do you think those concerns are valid?
Well, welcome to Colorado, everybody. We are so thrilled to be your hosts. I think it's best to talk about the debate in the context of Disagree Better. I think what we wanted and hoped for from a debate, and one of the reasons that many people really viewed the debate as a frustrating exercise, is more of an authentic conversation about differences of opinion, where you stand, coming to conclusion, rather than kind of lies or attacks on one another. Really understanding the difference in the vision over the next 4 years for the country. And there was a bit of that, and obviously I looked for that and hoped for that. But I think what the American people want is very consistent with Disagree Better, which is how can we really elevate the authentic discussion of the best path forward, rather than the denigration of the public discourse, which happened a bit during the debate last night.
Do you think that President Biden did that civil discourse?
Well, I think, I got a little sense of both of their policies, absolutely, probably a little bit more from President Biden than President Trump, but it was a policy-light debate. I think, really talking more about the future rather than relitigating the past would better be in the service of our democratic process.
So, Governor Cox, I want you to react too, and I know you're no fan of former President Trump. You call it a huge mistake for the party to nominate him, and you did not vote for him, I believe, in the last two elections, instead writing in a separate candidate. What did you make of the debate, his performance, former President Trump's performance, and some of the false claims that he was making on the debate stage?
Yeah, sure. I don't know that I was surprised by anything that happened last night. There was some polling done a year ago that 70% of Americans didn't want either of those candidates, and yet here we are. And so, I think it was mostly what we expected. I will say that I do think the debate format actually helped President Trump. I think having his microphone off was probably a good thing when that happened. No, I mean that sincerely, because it really put the focus on both candidates. They actually had to use up their time and answer the question without just the bantering back and forth. I guess the only time either of them really got angry with each other was when talking about their golf scores, which, that's where we are as a country. I will just say that I think it was, I'm not sure we've completely comprehend how far we've fallen as a country when those are our two options. And anyway,
You know what's really funny, Spencer? I'm sure you've been in a number of debates with your opponents. I have as well. Yeah. What I saw last night a number of times is both candidates, so moderators had to remind them, you have 52 seconds left. I mean, we always use up our time. We're friggin' politicians. I didn't understand
begging for more time every time I'm on the debate stage. Like, that was really a minute? How did that happen?
Yeah.
Exactly. Usually you're at the end begging for 10 seconds more.
It's bizarre. Yeah.
In the spirit of civility, would you have liked to see them shake hands? That has always been a tradition. We did not see it this time.
Yeah, look, we're getting rid of so many just norms in our country, and we think it's not a big deal. But I'm often reminded of Chesterton's fence. This idea that things exist for a reason, and before we tear down the fence, so you buy a new piece of property, there's an old fence there. Why has that fence been there for hundreds of years? We should take it down, and then immediately you find out why your neighbor's cattle come and eat your garden or whatever, right? We have these things that we've done, and we did them for a reason. And sure, maybe shaking hands isn't a big deal, but there is something symbolic about the transfer of American power and the way we battle each other, and we should battle each other with ideas. We should be passionate about those ideas, but then we can shake hands understanding that we're all Americans. So it's a little thing. It probably doesn't matter in the big picture, but you start to hack away at all of those norms over time, and we get to a place where we don't trust each other anymore, and that's not good for our democratic republic.
Yeah. So given that, let's talk about this Disagree Better initiative. How did it begin? What is the purpose of this initiative?
Yeah, so I just have to say that the National Governors Association is one of the last bastions of bipartisan work happening. So the Republicans choose their president, or chair, or vice chair every year, and the Democrats do the same thing, and then we work together. So I was the vice chair for a year. Now I'm the chair. Governor Polis is now the vice chair. In July, next month, he will become the chair. And every chair gets an initiative. You get to work on something that you're interested in or passionate about, and all the other governors help you. And we had a lot of ideas about how to lower the cost of health care. We should work on that. We should work on lowering the price of housing in our country. We should work on energy policy. But we came to this realization that we can't solve any of the biggest problems in our nation if we all hate each other. And so thus was born this idea of Disagree Better. Could we, by the way, this is not just a feel-good initiative. It's not just about being nice to each other, although we need more of that. But we started talking to experts in this field. There's a depolarization lab at Stanford that focuses just on this, running experiments and trying to find ways to help us. Dartmouth is doing work in this space. There are lots of other groups. And we found out that there is real research here and things that we could do. So that was kind of the idea. We kicked off the initiative. I had no idea if any of my fellow governors would be supportive, but Governor Polis stepped up in a big way and said, this is important for all of us, and we want to work together as governors to find solutions, and it's okay to disagree when we can't find those solutions. And so that's kind of how it worked, and now I'm on stage at Aspen having this conversation, which we never expected. So thank you for being here and letting us do this.
Well, Governor Polis, then give your perspective. When you heard about this initiative, were you initially immediately on board, or did it take some sort of cajoling to get involved? Why did you want to be part of this? And how do you think we even got here that we needed an initiative like this in the first place?
Well, it's very exciting and needed right now, and there's been tremendous buy-in from our fellow governors. I mean, so many of them have modeled what we sat down with somebody of the opposite party, opposite persuasion. It's something ultimately we think that everybody should do in their lives. As Spencer likes to talk about, it could be your MAGA uncle or your woke niece that you want to make sure they're all together at the Thanksgiving table, and you're able to have authentic discussions and dialogue without, being scared to talk about things, or, God forbid, not inviting people from your own family. Look, disagreements are important. Our founding fathers profoundly disagreed. It wasn't that Ronald Reagan and Tip O'Neill agreed on everything, but they rolled up their sleeves and they worked together, and were able to get a lot done. So I think it's very important to understand that disagree better doesn't mean you sacrifice your deeply held values. In fact, it's in many ways a more elevated way of expressing those values and making sure that you're able to work with people who might have different ideas, but also might share a lot in common about love for family and for country.
Well, then, talking about those values, and as we try to figure out ways that we all have some common ground, are there certain core values that you have found that every single American, regardless of party, holds and has and wants, certain needs we all want?
Look, one of the tricks that we preach with Disagree Better is when you are in a disagreement to ask the other person, tell me more about why you believe that, or tell me more about why you feel that way. It's kind of a magical request. The reason we do that, well, there's lots of reasons. One, I'm a fighter by nature. It gives me a chance to calm down and not punch the other person in the face. But it shows I'm interested in them. And I really do want to hear their perspective. It causes the other person to actually think about why they believe that, not just because they heard it on Fox News or MSNBC, but why do you really believe that? And this is why it's so important to answer your question. What you generally find, and sometimes I have to ask it 2 or 3 times, is you get to a core where you actually can agree. Often what I hear is, well, I believe that because I love my family, or I care deeply about my country and my community. And then I get to say, oh, I care about my country too. Can I share why I believe? I think those are some core values that we all share, that we love our communities, we care about our family, we love this place, we're worried about things that are happening in the world, we're worried about the economy and how it's impacting us. We may act out in different ways and adopt different policies, but in my life, when I got elected to the legislature, I remember having a conversation with someone who I was adamantly opposed to, and I was a freshman. It was the first time I'd really had this type of policy conversation. And we started talking, and I found out that we were trying to do solve the same problem. We had I grew up in the country on a farm. She grew up in the city. We had these different backgrounds, and we wanted the same thing. We just thought there were different ways to do that. And I think we would find that with most things, not all things, but with many things in our country if we gave each other a chance.
Governor Polis, what are some of those values that you feel we all hold and that can help us move forward together?
Well, again, I think the vast majority of Americans are, good, decent, caring human beings, and connecting with people on that level, making our community better. Tell me about your family. Tell me about, what you love to do. We in Colorado, we love the great outdoors, hiking, fishing, mountain climbing, and you know what? That it doesn't matter what your ideology is or persuasion is. I think these kinds of activities can bring people together, and there's so much more that we have in common that we have different. And of course, again, it doesn't mean on an issue you're going to agree, but understanding the why behind it is a very powerful way to help form a bond in a more meaningful way.
Yeah, Jim.
Can I just share something? Because Governor Polis is right, and he reminded me of something that I think is so important. It's those shared identities. When I was growing up, I didn't know who the Republicans and Democrats were in my congregation or in my town. Our political identities historically have been pretty far down the list. We were, Utahns first, or Americans first. We were dads, Utah Jazz fans. We can have this conversation. By the way, the Nuggets are much better for now. It's fine. We can argue about which ski resorts we love the most. We have those conversations, but those identities were far more important. Now, what we've done is we've elevated our political identity to be our first identity, and that was never intended. It's not healthy. It's bad for us. And so, one of the ways to help fix this is to find those shared identities, find something you do have in common with someone else, and build those bonds of trust before you have the harder conversations. Because once there's trust, then we can have the difficult conversations without hating each other or tearing us apart.
Is there polling that shows that people really want this? I say that because there's actually been even you've been in the middle of a primary debate that's been pretty sort of contentious in Utah. That was on Tuesday, and you beat your opponent. But the Republican Party of Utah endorsed your opponent. He's considered more far right than you are. You did not get the endorsement of your party. Do people want this? Do they want to disagree better?
Well, look, not everyone wants it. For sure. We have become addicted to outrage, and the powers that be on social media algorithms, cable news, they understand this. That by the way, the same things that happen to our brain when we take opioids, when we eat sugar, when we gamble, those dopamine hits, those receptors in our brains, outrage does the same thing. So we can be addicted to outrage, and people know that, and they use that. We call them conflict entrepreneurs. They exist in the media, they exist in politics, they exist in your neighborhoods. There are conflict entrepreneurs that do not want this. The polling shows, and More in Common, a group who does this, has shown that 70% of Americans hate what's happening in our country right now. We used to call them the silent majority, now they call them the exhausted majority. And you laugh because many of you are in that exhausted majority. And so, yes, we hate it, but also neither party is offering a different solution. There is a market failure happening here. And we, even those of us that hate it, on occasion fall into that trap, that outrage addiction. I do that sometimes. It's really hard to be the face of disagree better when every incentive is lined up against that, right? I get much more attention when I attack and tear down my opponents. People love it, right? Even if we know we shouldn't, we kind of do when it's our team versus the other team. And so we want to break that addiction, but we just don't always know how. So yes, I do believe that there is a market for this. We've seen it. It's gotten far more attention than we ever expected. The polling shows that people want this, but nobody is really offering it except for some governors and a few others across the country.
Well, and maybe some of you have seen it. In 2020, you did a campaign ad that went viral where you actually appeared in a campaign ad with your political opponent, the Democratic gubernatorial candidate running against you. Pretty much unheard of to do that. It went viral. People seem to love it. What was the reaction to that, and how has that sort of spawned this whole world for you?
Yeah, so the reaction was overwhelmingly positive. If you haven't seen it, I was really worried. This was the 2020 election. In Utah, our gubernatorial cycle is the same as the presidential cycle. So my opponent and I were running. It was getting close to November. We saw what was happening in the country. A friend said, I'm worried that if Trump wins, the left is going to burn it down. We had a summer of rioting across the country. And she said, and of course, I worry if Biden wins that the right is going to shoot it up. Those were her words. And we saw January 6th happen, right? She was, I think, prophetic in that concern. And she said, isn't there something you could do? So I'm like, I don't know. What can I do? So I called my opponent out of the blue and said, hey, what if we did an ad together? This is really weird, I know. You could hear the confusion in his voice on the phone. What? And he said, we talked about it. And he said, I love my country and I'm worried too. So yeah, let's do it. So we did this crazy ad where I said, I'm Spencer Cox and I think you should vote for me. And he said, I'm Chris Peterson and I think you should vote for me. And while we disagree on many things, we both agree that we can disagree without hating each other, that Utah is a special place, that we want to try to solve problems. The ad goes viral. A year later, the Stanford Polarization Lab used that ad in an experiment. They tested it along with 24 other, what they called interventions, on 30,000 people, and then they measured their responses. And what they found was our ad actually had a measurable result in decreasing polarization, specifically towards feelings of violence towards the other party. So seeing two people on stage together, a Republican and a Democrat, talking about how they don't hate each other, actually lowers the temperature in the room. So that inspired much of what we're doing. Thank you. So I asked this guy if he would do an ad with me, and we did one. You can Google it. We were sitting around a dinner table, as he mentioned, talking about how we can disagree without hating each other around the dinner table, the MAGA uncle and the woke niece line, and that went viral on TikTok of all places. So yeah, there is something out there.
Yeah, and actually, you bringing up TikTok and YouTube, where I saw your ad, brings up my next question, which Governor Polis, I'll let you weigh in on first, which is the role that social media plays in the divisions that we're seeing in our country. And I even look at politicians right now, and you were saying this, that often the most extreme comment goes viral, gets the most engagement, and you can become sort of a micro-influencer that way. So people somewhat want to be divisive to get that attention. So what role, Governor Polis, do you think social media is playing in a good or bad way?
So I'm glad that the science shows you're all going to be less violent after this exposure to us, so Aspen is safe. You know, social media, it's probably one that Spencer and I have some disagreements on. I'm a technologist, an internet entrepreneur, and I love the internet and the freedom on the internet. And there's things that, you know, he does that I wouldn't do, like he wants everybody to unplug for a day a week. I understand where he's coming from. I kind of, when I tell them, I said, hey, what about the positive side of technology? Maybe they want to ban it in schools, and I'm saying, what about learning technology? But I totally get that, of course, it can be a distraction. It can also reinforce the divisions that we have. All I can say is I think there's ample room for unity entrepreneurs instead of conflict entrepreneurs. And certainly I have a pretty wide social media following. I mean, not compared to famous people, but I mean, compared to governors, where, I have a lot, hundreds of thousands. And I'm
at 98,000.
220,000. But I don't deal in that. I mean, you'll see very little of that kind of rhetoric. I think before the debate last night, I posted on naked mole rats and how they're eusocial, for instance. So I just do, I do fun science, pop culture, and
those were
things like
very
that.
Disturbing, by the way.
They
those
look
naked
disturbing.
mole rats.
They look very disturbing.
Not into that yet.
But so again, it's good and it's bad, but I don't think it's something that you try to put back in the can. I think overall, the internet brings people together. It's progress. Social media helps families stay in touch and keep track of what one another are doing, and friendships helps form new friendships. At the same time, wide-eyed, absolutely. One bill I did sign was one that we're going to create a toolkit for parents at our Department of Education to help make sure that they're able to be more critical and knowledgeable about the decisions that they make with their family and their kids. I just think it should be parents, not government, that fundamentally makes these decisions.
Do you want to jump in on that? How do you disagree?
Yeah, so we're going to show you how to disagree better here.
Yes, please do.
We agree on several of those things. We too launched an initiative empowering parents and informing them about the dangers of social media that's been very successful. The
difference is I see dangers and opportunities.
And opportunities, yes. I'm a Jonathan Haidt acolyte. I think his new book, if you haven't, I think every parent has to read it. I think every grandparent, everybody who might be a parent, everybody who's an aunt and uncle needs to read it. It's called The Anxious Generation, and it talks about all the research behind social media and how damaging it is to our kids. And so, again, I'm not into telling parents what to do, but I am about empowering parents, and I do think that we need these phones at least out of the classrooms, if nowhere else. At least get them out of the classrooms. Every study has shown that when we do that, test scores go up, connection goes up. I think it's really important. I think we are destroying our kids and adults, by the way, with these social media algorithms. We are suing Meta, TikTok. We're suing them all to hold them accountable. I think. To me, they're the tobacco companies of the 50s and 60s. They're the opioid companies of the 90s and early 2000s, and we're going to hold them accountable. By the way, there is a way to do this responsibly, where we're not intentionally addicting our children and giving them access to the very worst content that is out there. Jonathan, if he was here, would tell you that we're over-supervising in the real world, which is one of the problems. We need more free-range parenting. We need kids out there taking more chances. It is safer than it's ever been outside, and we're under-supervising in the digital world, and that's how we feel.
So. And we will get to some more tangible things about what we can do in our real lives in a bit. But I do want.
Can I say one thing?
Yeah, go in.
Because I forgot that I left the problem. Look, from the original question. No. I just have to say the problem with social media is, look, we're lonelier than we've ever been before. Statistically, we used to have more real friends, more face-to-face connections than we've ever had. We are wired for connection. What social media has done is given us a false alternative to that. And if we don't have any friends in real life, at least we can hate the same people together on Facebook. And that is what is so damaging. It has exponentially increased the outrage and pulling us away from each other and putting us in these false connections that don't work. So I just wanted to throw that out.
Thank you for following up and these silos.
It's interesting because my narrative of kind of the internet is very different. I think building bridges, bringing people together across the world in a common cause, helping people find other people like them. I think of a 14-year-old gay kid growing up in rural Utah, not knowing there's anybody else like them, finding community. It's really a wonderful thing, and it's one that was I was in early user of the internet. As a parent, my 12-year-old and 9-year-old don't use social media. We don't have them do that. I don't give that advice to other parents. It's up to them. Do they have connected devices? Of course. They just don't have social media accounts. They use their iPads for many other purposes, but that's really in the realm of the personal, not any of the government's business.
And he's doing it the right way. Like, our kids should not be on those devices until they're at least past puberty, again, according to the research.
I don't know. There's some 9-year-old influencers bringing in big bucks for their families here. I don't know.
Yeah, they're going to be super messed up when they get older.
They'll get their college paid for, though.
That's true.
Okay, I want to bring up sort of the cynical side of this, because it obviously is really great, everything you're saying, but I think there are people who say, okay, that's great in theory, but we're not seeing this in practice. And an example that came to my mind is the bipartisan immigration bill earlier this year that had bipartisan support. And then former President Trump essentially said he didn't want Republicans to pass it because maybe he didn't want to give Biden an election year win. And now we don't have this immigration reform. So you're seeing politics get in the way. Does our political system need to change in order to actually move forward with something like this?
Yeah, I was going to say immigration is a great example of this, and we've talked about this a lot. We formed, for the first time ever, a governor's bipartisan working group on immigration, which I think can and would come to agreement about this vexing issue.
And we did find common ground.
We found a lot of common ground.
Yeah.
And I mean, it obviously starts with no one is going to get everything that they want, right? No one person gets the right to build. It's a very contentious issue. You have to understand that if you want to come to agreement, that you want something that is much better than the status quo. It's better than the status quo, significantly. Perfect in anybody's mind? No. Better? Yes. And of course, it starts with misunderstandings on both sides, right? Republicans actually think that Democrats don't believe in border security. So we start by saying, of course we want to provide, we need solid border security. We need to prevent the illegal flow of people and drugs and guns into our country. So you start there. And likewise, many Democrats think Republicans hate immigrants or don't want immigrants or don't understand their importance to the economy. And Republicans start, of course, by saying, of course we understand the role of immigrants in our economy. It's critical for so many sectors, our ski sector, our ag sector, our entrepreneurship. And so you got to peel away these misconceptions that have been fed to us by these conflict entrepreneurs on both sides and understand that we actually do want to solve this together. Now, that's eluded Congress for many years, but I do think the governors have been able to step up, and if we were the legislature, I'm confident we would have passed a bill, but we do believe in really solving this, and I think there's a path forward for our country on comprehensive immigration reform and border security.
And Governor Cox, do you want to jump in on that? Because I still feel like there's just the way our political system is not allowing for this policies to pass.
I mean, I don't know if it's the way our political system is or it's the people that we're putting into that political system, right? I mean, this is one of the problems that we're seeing today. One of my favorite authors, a little right-leaning, but I think even those of you on the left would enjoy it, Yuval Levin, has written a couple books about this. One is called A Time to Build, and in there he talks about how these institutions are failing us, but because we've turned them into performative opportunities. So we're electing people who have no interest in actually governing. They're just interested in getting clicks and hits and on cable news. They're using it for performative purposes. And so that's what happens. We don't get these problems solved. He also, in his latest book that just came out, talks about our Constitution. And he would make the argument, and I will make the argument, that unity is not agreeing on the same things. Unity, we make that mistake. People say that about disagree better. You just want me to agree with the other side. You just think we all have to believe the same thing. That is not unity in a distinctly American context. Unity, and the Constitution it was set up for this, means acting together. Right? If we keep thinking too often that if only we win the next election, we won't have to deal with those people anymore. Right? That's what we keep hearing. The Constitution says otherwise. It's very messy, and it ensures that we will always have to deal with those people. And it gave us a framework to deal with those people. And it it only functions, though, in a pluralistic society when we're willing to do the work, and it is hard work. It's supposed to be hard work. It was meant that we would have to form broad coalitions, that no one side would ever get enough power to kind of take over. So we have to work with the other side. That's unity if we're ever going to solve any of these problems. And that's, so yes, it is failing us, but again, we the people can change that. We the people get to decide who we send back to these offices, who runs for these offices. And I think historically, things have to get really bad before they start getting good again. I think last night was really bad. And so I'm hoping that, maybe not now, but maybe 4 years from now, we'll have some other options on both parties. Someone like a Jared Polis.
Or Spencer Cox.
I know. Are both of you?
That one is not going to happen, I can assure you.
Are both of you contemplating presidential runs in 4 years?
No, I can tell you one of us is not. But there are some really good people, some amazing governors on my side too, that I think that could do that and would inspire people, and we just got to give them a chance.
I actually want to circle back to something because I'm curious, and we'll keep it brief, but what is the thing that you both agree on with immigration that you said you came to realize?
Both those things.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have our principles in front of them, but I can describe them essentially in a way. Of course, it includes really strong measures around border security, which means both physical border security is better, as well as better workplace authentication. At the same time you do workplace authentication, you need to make sure there's some kind of provisional permit for people that we need in our workforce today, right? One idea we had is let the states help figure this out. He actually has authorization to do it from his state already. His legislature passed that. But if the feds let us, we could issue the temporary work permits, right? So there's a lot that we can agree on and do. Border security, workplace authorization, authentication, provisional permits. You get into harder areas when you say when or if people can become citizens. I think, first of all, again, there's misunderstandings on both sides. I think Republicans think that Democrats want to make everybody a citizen tomorrow and have them all vote for Democrats. Not the case. And I think Democrats think Republicans want to always hold them out there as some second-class resident, and even after 40 years and earning a living in a country, they somehow can never become a citizen. Maybe a few Republicans do, but I think most don't. I think most understand that there's some reasonable period where if you work hard, play by the rules, for whatever period of time it is. By the way, citizenship is never granted automatically to anybody. It's conferred based on a test and a process. And perhaps someday people who want to be here should be able to do that. Others, by the way, want to spend a season working here and go back to another country. It's not their desire to become Americans. That shouldn't be foisted on them, but they need a legal way to do that. We have those provisions today, but it's not enough to fuel the growth of our economy in many sectors.
Broad agreement.
Okay. Is there something... Or is there something that a belief you once held that you've changed your opinion on, either through your friendship or through working with other governors, that you've changed your opinion on through discussion?
Sure. Yeah. There are lots. It's interesting as politicians. It's the one area, the one job, I guess, for lack of a better term, where we criticize people for changing their positions. In every other walk of life, it's a good thing when you grow and learn and do new things, but here it's your flip-flop or your turn. Now, again, some politicians change their mind just to get votes, not because they really believe it. But look, I've been pretty open with this one. When I was a kid growing up in a very conservative, small, very religious town, we the way we looked at our LGBTQ community was very different. I gave a speech after the Polis shooting that went viral many years ago where I talked about this, that there were a couple kids that I made fun of behind their backs. I wasn't a bully, but I didn't know they were gay, but I probably said some things I regretted. And as I got older and got to meet people and friends and learned those differences and how much I loved and adored them, it changed me. and I think made me a better person. I hope. I don't always get it right still, but I'm certainly trying harder than I did back then, and that's a good thing. You know, it may not be very popular now that we're back into the culture wars and it's so divisive. Certainly, I know it's hurt me with my party at times in my state, but I still try. I really try to make sure everybody has a seat at the table. It doesn't mean, again, that you get your way or you get your bill passed or you get elected, but it certainly means that everybody should have a seat at the table and be participating in those decisions.
And Governor Polis, if you could react to that, you are openly gay, the first openly male governor in the United States. You married your husband in 2021. And Governor Cox, you still do have some pretty conservative positions on LGBTQ plus rights. So Governor Polis, where do you think you both find common ground, and how do you discuss this issue together?
Well, I think it all comes down to respecting the basic dignity of every human being. You know, regardless of their faith or who they love or what they're doing in life. It's about understanding that on an authentic level, we respect their dignity. And if I can do an example of what I changed my mind on, I was going to pull out my cell phone, because when I became governor 6 years ago, there were proposals to ban cell phone use while driving, require hands-free. And my initial reaction was to be against that. I was like, really, you want cops like looking into cars and seeing what people are doing and pulling people over without a moving violation just because they're using the phone? Didn't like it. And I opposed it for a number of years. And I just looked at the data, and I really had to weigh, of course, you know, natural skepticism about, you know, looking into vehicles to see what they're doing, with the fact that we're just losing too many innocent people and maiming and injuring too many innocent people. And I came to the conclusion that requiring hands-free, you know, that your phone's in a headset while you're driving would save lives and make a difference. And I signed that bill. It's now required. So those of you who live in Colorado, hands-free only. And that was something I changed my mind on from where I was when I became governor.
Interesting. Thank you. I have a little short game I want to play that's fun to lighten the mood. But before we do that, I would love each of you to share for all of us tangible things that you think we can do in our own communities with our own friends and families to try to disagree better with those we know.
Sure. I mean, I mentioned a couple already, but one I would encourage everyone to do is to spend more time with someone who is different than you, someone who disagrees with you. Somebody, if you're a Democrat, spend some time with Republican and get to know them better. All of the data shows, it was fascinating. There was kind of a research project where a very ultra-progressive congregation, Jewish congregation in New York, went and spent a week living with very conservative corrections officers in Michigan. And the stories are wild about those two groups. And then they reversed it, and these ultra kind of MAGA conservative corrections officers went and lived in New York for a week in the homes of this very progressive Jewish congregation. And I got an opportunity to talk to some of them, and it was, man, I just wish every American had an opportunity like that, because they loved each other. They would do anything for each other, even though at first they thought they hated each other. And just spending that time together changed their opinions on so many different things, but especially, again, that human dignity piece, that these are real people. And even though we are you know, our religions are different, our politics are different, you know, one of the guys I have just said to you, this little lady she said, I went to this guy's house, and the first thing he said is, hey, we're going to go shoot guns. And she said, I had never seen a gun. I had never touched a gun. I was terrified that they had a gun in the house. And she went to the shooting range, and she said, it was so much fun. Why didn't anyone tell me how much fun that was going to be? But those were the types of experiences that they had that really changed.
You know, guns are another good example, because based on the cultural context in our country, it means very different things. You can talk to a Coloradan, you know, from Rio Blanco County, and say, yeah, guns. We go hunting, we go target shooting. This is what we do, you know, do for fun. You can talk to somebody in East Denver who says, guns. That's what killed my sister and my cousin.
Yeah.
So it's a very different context for what a gun is. And so sometimes when they're talking about gun safety requirements, it's almost like people are speaking two different languages, right? About what that even means in the context of their lives and what their lives mean.
Yeah. Yeah. I drove to school every day to high school with a gun on the window at the back of my truck, my junior and senior year. so did everyone else. I either had a .22, a shotgun, or a .30-06, depending on what was happening after school that day. And again, to many of you, that seems like like he should have been arrested, right? Right? And even now that would not happen. This was many years ago, but that context is so important and so different.
Governor Polis, is there any other final thought you wanted to mention about things we can do?
I wanted to cite another sort of example of one we're dealing with in Colorado. Some of you are Coloradans. We're dealing with the reintroduction of wolves. We have one of our CPW commissioners here, Ed Vardy, who actually lives here in Aspen from Pitkin County. And this is such an interesting issue because there's a deep mistrust and misperception that both sides, and I wouldn't call it partisan with a capital P, but generally speaking, is alignment of somewhat aligned with party on both sides. But it's just a deep misunderstanding and the need for that authentic way to disagree better. So, Ed, we just need to get people to disagree better, right? I mean, the residents of our state voted to reintroduce wolves. They want wolves as part of a healthy ecosystem. They have to understand that, of course, our ranchers and ag communities are part of our state, and we want to provide the supports that we can to make sure that wolves can be successfully integrated as they are in many other Western states with ranching. And at the same time, ranchers have to understand that this isn't something that like urban and suburban residents did to hurt them. It was something for the overall ecosystem health of the state. And of course, urban and suburban residents care about them. They care about, as consumers, the products that they create. And they need to find a way to get past, and we haven't succeeded yet necessarily, these initial emotions and sort of conflict entrepreneurship to get to kind of where we can really just roll up our sleeves and figure out how this works in our state. And that's the challenge that we're facing in that one area that may sound strange to those of you from the East Coast or other places, but here in our state, that means a lot.
Absolutely. Well, okay, I want to lighten the mood before we open it up for questions and ask you about some hot button issues to see where you agree and disagree. That's a joke. Okay. Summer or winter? Governor Cox.
I'm a summer guy.
Okay.
Summer also.
Okay, absolutely. Agreement. Woohoo!
Especially cool summers here in Pitkin County.
This. Great.
Crunchy peanut butter or smooth peanut butter?
Smooth.
Gosh, I'm torn on this one. If it's for like a sandwich, I'm going to go with smooth also.
He's
okay.
Such a flip-flopper.
Yeah.
I
care about the vote of the crunchies.
Yeah, trying to be everything to everyone. Typical
I value
politician.
the crunchiness.
All right, 2 for 2.
Don't want to offend half the room.
Dairy milk or dairy alternatives?
Oh, alternative for sure. I'm lactose intolerant. That's easy.
Dairy milk, 100%. I grew up on a dairy farm my early life, so yeah.
We can get past that, I hope.
I can have small amounts, but let's just say you don't want to be around me after.
All right, sweet or salty?
Salty.
Sweet.
All right. I think we're 2 and 2.
Yep.
Backstreet Boys or NSYNC?
Oh, come on.
Neither.
I saw one of them in concert back in the day, and I can't remember which.
Oh, no.
Which one was Lance Bassett?
NSYNC.
I saw NSYNC.
Okay,
once.
me too.
Yeah.
The millennial in me.
There you go.
Oh, yeah. Okay. Final one, Colorado or Utah?
Oh, Utah. I mean, come on.
So look, we're never going to agree on which state is better skiing. We know it's
right.
Colorado. But we can agree that skiing and outdoor or recreation is a wonderful thing, and kids ought to be able to do it, and we care about access, and we care about how we can make sure that everybody can enjoy the great outdoors, and that's something that we share in common.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, you can see how that works, right? Like building the industry is good for both of us. Mm-hmm. Some people will ski Colorado and Utah. It just depends, but we do have the greatest snow on earth. By the way, this was confirmed by researchers, so I'm just...
Well, we want you East Coasters to take up skiing for sure, and Californians and everybody else. So.
Well, with that, thank you all for playing along. We're going to... Thank you. Thanks, guys. We can open it up to questions right here. Do we have a mic? I think yes, we have a mic coming around.
Hi, I'm a foreigner. I have a citizenship in U.S. I have a question. For me as a foreigner, it's completely misunderstood. How come last night we saw what we saw versus having 2 guys like you, reasonable, balanced, smart, having a debate?
I did have to laugh. Somebody on X or Twitter, whatever we call it now, said something like, hey, to all foreigners, please turn off your TVs. This is our private family stuff that we're dealing with. So please don't watch. Look, it is interesting when I said that 70% of Americans don't want this, and yet we ended up with this. I think part of it is the way we do nominate our candidates. I think it kind of lends us towards that. But also it's this kind of zero-sum game. Well, if they're going to do it, we have to get our guy, and so we're kind of stuck in this. We just can't break out of it, and that's problematic. But again, nothing lasts forever, and pendulums swing back, and I hope we get that opportunity. I don't know if you have any other thoughts.
You know, a parliamentary system is generally going to favor somebody who works with others well, for sure. Our system favors strong personalities over the ability to work with others. So we've gotten some folks I would consider good and moving strong personalities, Barack Obama being an example. His forte was actually not working with others. I don't think he wouldn't have become party leader in a parliamentary system, Barack Obama. But I'm saying so it's not for better or worse. In this case, maybe we have the force of personality driving it. But you'd get different kinds of leaders out of a parliamentary system than out of a presidential system.
Right here. Yes, you. wait for the mic. Hold on.
There we go.
I think you guys are saying something really important about electability culture, and it is the least talked about issue in democracy. My question for you all is, everyone else has to have a job description and all of these core competencies to be in office. How are we supposed to assess during a fraught campaign culture who's going to have the skills to be able to disagree better?
Yeah, look, what I always urge people to do, and again, I want to be very clear. Like, I disagree vehemently with lots of stuff that President Biden is doing. We've sued him 60 times in Utah. But this culture piece matters. So what I ask people to do is to make this an actual issue, like abortion, like guns, whatever your pet issue is that's kind of the dividing line. When you get a chance to ask candidates for office, ask them this question: what are you going to do to depolarize our nation? What are you going to do to work with the other side? Like, make them think that this, as Americans, we don't elevate this as an issue. It's kind of over everything, but we don't know how to articulate it. But let's make it, what if that was an issue? What is your stance on abortion? How are you going to depolarize this country? And then force them to answer the question. Force them to articulate it. What we found with our fellow governors is that they really have responded to this. They know they want something better, but kind of, again, the culture is you have to go to the extremes and you'll get killed. I'm trying to prove to people that this isn't just good for our country and good for your soul, but you can actually win elections this way, because that's the only way we will ever see change, is if politicians respond to those incentives. If I'm going to lose the next election because I'm treating people with contempt, I'm going to do it differently. So we have to elevate it.
Another question. Right here, you in the second row there. Yeah, I've seen you raise your hand before.
Hi, thank you so much for being here. Colorado passed the first comprehensive AI law of any state in the country recently, and I wanted to ask Governor Polis and Governor Cox, how do you feel about the possibility of a piecemeal approach to that important issue, and what are the possibilities for cooperation between governors on that issue in the future? Is it a place where people can agree or disagree better?
Sure. Yeah, so on a lot of these things around the internet, which again I value as a global treasure, I don't think a piecemeal approach makes sense. The big guys can always deal with it. Can Google and Microsoft, can they deal with the piecemeal approach? Sure, but tomorrow's garage entrepreneur can't deal with 50 different compliance regimes just to be able to serve Americans. So I do think that there's two ways to address this. One way would be if Congress was functional. That would be the preferred way. We do this nationally. Absent that, I think states can adopt identical or very similar standards so that tomorrow's garage startup doesn't need to have 6 lawyers before they hire their 3rd programmer. That's just not a recipe for innovation or success. So again, I think we're headed probably that way, where states will try to harmonize, and I think that needs to succeed. But once you have enough states in that space, hopefully there would be pressure on Congress in this area to pass sensible ways to, of course, protect consumers and support information, but at the same time, make sure we're not compromising our innovation economy and America's leadership.
That's the right answer. Yep.
I think we have time for one more, and over here, right here.
I think all of us did not want the two people standing there 4 years ago, and they're standing here again. Looking forward, because we're all going to just do what we need to do to
survive,
get through this election. Who do you want for 2028? And how are you going to put the screws to the establishment to affect the change and get some actual fresh people like yourselves in positions of power like this?
Look, I don't know if there is an establishment anymore that can control the levers of power like they used to. What I mean is, like, party leadership used to, there was a smoke-filled room and they could make deals and get that done. I think that doesn't happen anymore, or it wouldn't have happened in 2016, honestly, in my party. So what are we going to do? Well, age will take care of some of this, I think, if I'm just...
Term limits.
If I'm just being honest, yeah, and term limits, right, at the present. So we will inevitably have a new crop of people. I do think what we can do, what we can all do, all of us, is to find people who are willing, who are inspiring, who at least have a positive vision for the country and how we can work together and to support them. And that's what I'm going to do. Again, I'm not running for president in 4 years, but I am looking for people to support who will do that. And so, I love people. I like Glenn Youngkin. He's a great governor. I think I prefer governors. I think that executive experience is really important. We know how they govern. That can be helpful. So people like that I'm going to be encouraging.
I think from all appearances, it should be wide open on both sides, which means there can be a real audition and work and a chance to get to know people and their compelling image. I mean, Barack Obama, who I consider a terrific president, really came from relative obscurity, of course, first-term senator from Illinois, to captivate the nation and unite the nation and win fairly overwhelmingly. So I think there's that kind of opportunity.
Would you consider it?
I'm not looking at, I mean, part of what, we've certainly made politics a very unpleasant profession for those who are in it. And, part of that is this lack of disagreeing better. I mean, it's the fact that you can expect, people in your face at your house lying and denigrating you, not based on your opinions or what you're saying, but on a more fundamental level, dehumanizing you. And we deal with that, and I've dealt with that as a congressman and governor. I'm sure Spencer has too, from both sides of the aisle. But, it certainly can turn people off to this profession, and that's a shame. I think another unwritten advantage of Disagree Better is if we can turn people on to public service, that would be wonderful.
Absolutely.
He didn't say no.
Yeah, he did not. Thank you. Thank you all so much. Thank you, governors, to both of you for this enlightening conversation. I think we all are better off for it, and thank you all for being here. So,
thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching. Stay updated about breaking news and top stories on the NBC News app or follow us on social media.